I'm not known to spare the lash. Like, that's not what I do over here. People go fight on the weekend, and I come and talk about them behind their back. It's just the way that it goes. There's 11 fights over the weekend, which means there's 11 silver medalists. But every now and then somebody gets the silver medal, and they look great. You want to know who that was? Miesha Tate. I really think that, guys. Golden rule. My mother, Mrs. Sonnen. But when I was growing up, it was always put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Any situation that I was in, like, hey, Chael, imagine if you were them. My mom drilled that into my head, and I'm sure plenty of you can relate to that. But if I do that with Miesha Tate, I could not have succeeded in her situation any more than she did. You're telling me I'm going to take 5 years away from a sport that I don't believe I'm ever coming back to. My physiology as well as mentality is going to change because she becomes a mother. She gets married. Life is totally different. She moved to a different continent, went to the corporate world for a little bit with ONE FC, comes back, decides that this is what she's going to do. She gets to put her foot in the tub one time, which only lasted 11 minutes. And then she's into a 5-round main event on ESPN. My goodness, who the hell could succeed at that? Conor McGregor, just to throw a huge name at you, but Conor took X amount of time off, and he was boxing and busy and doing some other stuff, but life got to him, and fatherhood and parent. I mean, some of this stuff that's very real. Came back and, with his first fight with Poirier, we all gave him a full pass. We gave him a full pass to the point that we say, hey, let's go do it again. Throw that one out. It never even happened. Because we got what we expected, which was somebody that was a little bit rusty. Jon Jones is going through that. I mean, I'm trying to name drop right now. I'm not looking to backhand somebody. I'm looking to do the opposite. I'm using some huge names in the sport that have not been gone for 5 years, changed their lives completely, get one time back, and then they're thrown into 5-round main events. And even Jon Jones is conscious enough, because of the workouts that he's getting in the gym, to come back a little bit easier, to make sure that he's got certain boxes checked. Miesha didn't get to do any of those things. She does one fight, and she's in a potentially 5-round contest, which, by the way, went all 5 rounds, and she held up. And I realized that 5th round got away from her, but the 4th round didn't. I had her winning the 4th round. So we talking 4th and 5th, you're talking about championship rounds. She won one of the championship rounds. She only had one fight in 5 years. What? This was not all bad. If you're Team Cupcake, there was a lot more happening than just who won the fight. There was all sorts of other little battles that went into this, and there was a lot of boxes that she checked. I thought she looked really good. I really did. Her timing is a little bit off from the X's and O's. When Miesha Tate was the champion of the world, she was doing mixed martial arts, which means she was striking and grappling seamlessly. It was flowing. It was one. Many fighters, when they come back, and Miesha would go into this category, start doing 2 different sports at 2 different times. They start striking at times, and then grappling at times. Then they're striking at times, and they're grappling at times. As they get their flow back, as they get their reps and their rhythm, they start to combine it all into one. That's what Miesha did when she was the champion of the world. That's what she's missing now. It's just not her fault. You cannot replicate that. You cannot duplicate that. You have to be in the ring practicing that. So she's now getting these minutes. She's getting her reps in. I don't believe Miesha's best days are behind her. And she's being tested right now, and it's not physically. She's in a mental battle right now. How is she going to respond from this? Does she bounce back? Does she get her ass in the gym? Does she agree with what I'm saying? Does she truly believe I performed well? I'm getting better. It's hard to do. Most athletes aren't world champions like Miesha Tate, but in all fairness, most athletes are fully based on the outcome. And you see this with boxers even more than you do in MMA. If you lose a fight, you fire your whole team. You fire your trainer. Deontay Wilder fired a trainer in the locker room the night of a fight because the guy stopped the contest. I mean, just in fairness, this is the way that it goes. When it should not be about the outcome, it should be about the performance. How did you perform? It's a 2-person sport. Your odds aren't all that great. You can't control if the other person also performs very well. And then the judges have to decide the outcome of this. But are you performing? The answer for Miesha, a lot of boxes, yes. And if you're not willing to give that to her, then we can't give anything to Kaitlyn, who stole the night. This is Kaitlyn's night, not Miesha's, and I'm not trying to put Miesha in front of her. But if you don't acknowledge how well Miesha looked, what limited time Miesha had, how well she did flow, and maybe it wasn't perfect and in world championship form, but you can't give any credit to Kaitlyn. And I felt as though Kaitlyn Vieira, the lights were a little bit too big. I think in that opening round might have been the most obvious, but I would put it more like 7, 8, even 9 minutes in. She was fighting the idea of Miesha Tate. Once she settled in and just started fighting the person in front of her, these movements versus my movements, my conditioning, my size, my strength, my strategy versus my opponents. Once she settled in and started doing that, you saw her starting to flow a little bit. And that 5th round would be a great example because Kaitlyn Vieira had never been in championship rounds either. And the fact that she could even get to them, let alone hold up, let alone dominate the 5th round. Find her, slipping her head out of the way, using her feet. She looked very good. And when you are at 135 pounds, you are nonstop in a contender's division. Nonstop. It's just like 125 that is absolutely controlled by the bullet. 135 is absolutely controlled by Queen Amanda. Who's going to be next? And it is a constant musical chairs. Many people have very similar records, but they don't have name recognition. That's what Miesha brought to the table. That's why Miesha was right to the top, and I still believe she's 1 and maybe 2 wins away from being right back in there. But now Kaitlyn Vieira is getting a little bit of rub. She gets a little bit of shine fighting on ESPN, getting over on Cupcake, doing a good job. She hasn't raised her hand yet. I don't submit for you that Kaitlyn Vieira is going to go right into a title shot. I do submit for you that she will go right into the conversation of a title shot, which is where you first have to be. The first lady that raises her hand at 135 and says, I want the winner of Juliana versus Amanda is going to become the number 1 contender. Kaitlyn didn't go that far, but she is now in these talks. I think she surprised herself. She deserves to feel very good about herself. But if you're Team Cupcake, there is nothing today to be down about.